love, social convention, gender roles, and religion. Charlotte Bronte's most famous novel challenges ideas on all these topics, and we are here to discuss it. I'm Charlene.
And I'm Mike.
And this is Jane Eyre Files. Chapter 33. Fraternal and Sisterly Love. Hello, husband.
Hello, hard woman.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, not a whole lot in this chapter.
No.
References to mistress or girl, but
yeah.
No pet name.
That's a unique name, or unique phrase.
Hard woman? Mm-hmm. Because I think she says it herself.
Right.
Or she says, I am a hard woman.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is a good chapter. This was a fun read.
Yeah.
I mean, we get you were saying how like we were going to finally find out why St. John scurried off with this torn piece of paper. You know?
And it's not much of a cliffhanger because right the next chapter we find out why.
very next one, yeah.
So let's read the chapter summary from SparkNotes. One snowy night, Jane sits reading Marmion when St. John appears at the door. Appearing troubled, he tells Jane the story of an orphan girl who became the governess at Thornfield Hall, then disappeared after nearly marrying Edward Rochester. This runaway governess's name is Jane Eyre. Until this point, Jane has been cautious not to reveal her past, and has given the Rivers a false name. Thus, although it is clear that St. John suspects her of being the woman about whom he speaks, she does not immediately identify herself to him. He says that he has received a letter from a solicitor named Mr. Briggs, intimating that it is extremely important that this Jane Eyre be found. Jane is only interested in whether Mr. Briggs has sent news of Rochester, but St. John says that Rochester's well-being is not at issue. Jane Eyre must be found because her uncle, John Eyre, has died, leaving her the vast fortune of £20,000.
Jane reveals herself to be Jane Eyre. Knowing that St. John has guessed already, she asks him how he knew. He shows her the scrap of paper he tore from her drawing the previous day. It is her signature. She then asks why Mr. Briggs would have sent him a letter about her at all. St. John explains that though he did not realize it before, he is her cousin. Her Uncle John was his Uncle John, and his name is St. John Eyre Rivers. Jane is overjoyed to have found a family at long last, and she decides to divide her inheritance between her cousins and herself evenly, so that they each will inherit £5,000.
So generous.
Yeah. Okay, a couple things.
Yes.
Number one, we mentioned it on the last episode that Charlotte Bronte seems to be obsessed with Sir Walter Scott and this book, Marmion. Right. The fact that she brings it up again.
Oh, yeah.
Reading Marmion again. Hey, but did I mention reading Marmion?
With a direct quote, too.
Yeah. Just let you know, everybody, I'm reading Marmion. And then the other one is, I got to run this past you before we get really deep into the discussion, but discovering her name by seeing it written down on a piece of artwork, that seems a little obvious and hackneyed. And I think, doesn't St. John even uses that term, hackneyed, when he says, I'm going to tell you this story, and you're going to believe, it's going to seem kind of hackneyed.
Oh, well, I think it's hackneyed because she knows it already. But I do wonder, I like to draw sometimes. I don't tend to doodle with writing my name. But, maybe at that time, that was common. Maybe people were like, oh, yeah, that's totally true. I always do that.
I don't know. It seems like a very convenient plot device.
Very convenient, yeah. There's a couple of convenient plot devices in this chapter.
Well, it just seems, like I said, it's kind of a means to an end. Like Charlotte was writing this book, and she's like, I got to find a way for St. John to find out. Oh, I'll just have Jane signing her drawings, even though she's made such a point to, keep her identity a secret. Unless is this an old drawing? It's not. It's a new drawing. No, yeah. And if she's trying to keep her identity a secret, why is she signing her name onto new drawings?
Habit. I don't know. Although I do think that it does say in this chapter that St. John suspected it, before she saw her name. So he suspected that she might be the missing person.
Oh, okay.
St. John's smart.
Well, sort of. Is he smart enough that he's traveling through a heavy snowstorm?
Well, it's very in keeping with his character, apparently, since he just disregards anything that will stop him from doing an important task.
Yeah, but this couldn't wait till the morning?
I know. I was a little bit surprised because I feel like, his character doesn't, he seems really excited to tell Jane that he knows who she is. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't seem like part of his character since he doesn't really get excited about things.
No.
But apparently he is really excited about this.
Yeah. That's why I'm wondering, like, is he getting something out of this? What is he getting out of all this? This weird satisfaction? I mean, why is he braving these elements? Especially, like you said, it's very much out of character that he's so eager to talk to her, and you said, what does he get excited about? Missionary work?
Yeah.
Lord's work?
Pretty much. Doing good, but I don't know. It's sort of a feeling of like, perhaps that he's just so happy that he discovered her secret and he wants to make sure she knows.
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a thought puzzle. I'm not sure exactly why. It doesn't really fit,
Yeah, I can just, because when you're reading it, again, I can't picture the adaptations as far as this scene in my mind exactly. Mm-hmm. I keep picturing the blonde guy in 1973.
Oh, okay.
But I can see this being told with a smirk, when he's telling this, when he's revealing this whole thing. And I wonder, what is he, what?
Are you saying because he has sort of a mocking, like, humorous way in which he's kind of talking to her? So
well, yeah, but it's just sort of like, I know something you don't.
Yeah, that's where I feel like he might be
over you. And
excited about that.
But why? But again, you're right. He doesn't seem like that kind of person. He always struck me as being kind of cold, unfeeling,
Yeah. Well, I guess it just shows another side of him that apparently we didn't know about.
But did you find it jarring that was such a dramatic shift where all of a sudden he's very humorous and he's kind of mocking her in a way with, the way he's addressing her in this chapter?
Well, jarring for the fact that doesn't seem within his character, but I do enjoy it because I feel like it does show sort of a little lightheartedness that you again don't expect, and also might be why kind of Jane gravitates towards him. Mm-hmm. As she has such a good relationship with him, especially if that is something that he doesn't really show to other people, but he is kind of showing it to Jane.
Yeah, I will say, and I failed to mention this earlier, but this is a very well-written chapter. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of really great lines of dialogue, and there's a part where he's describing this story. He's going to have to tell Jane this story, and he basically says, I will find the matter will be better managed by my assuming the narrator's part and converting you into a listener. All about conversions, these missionaries, huh? But, this idea, and so when he, there's a one point where he's telling the story. I think you've got the quote where he brings up a rat in the barn.
Oh, right.
It has nothing to do with the middle of this story, and he just drops this weird quote in there.
Well, he sees that Jane reacts with startles at the fact that he knows Mrs. Reed's name, and when he mentions it, he says, "You start. Did you hear a noise? I dare say it is only a rat scrambling along the rafters of the adjoining schoolroom. It was a barn before I had it repaired and altered, and barns are generally haunted by rats."
So I didn't pick up on that he saw her.
Oh, right.
Being startled by the mention of the name. Okay.
Yeah, but then he kind of, he extends this, it's rats, and, it was a barn, and it was repaired and altered. Okay, I got it, St. Jane, you're having fun right now.
yeah, it is. And then, when Jane mentioned how much it's worth, he just says, "Oh, nothing, of course, to speak of, just 20,000 pounds. What's that?" And it's like, okay.
Yeah. Again, I just feel like he is kind of just excited to hey, I know this thing that you don't.
Mm-hmm. But you think it's drawing them closer?
Especially if this is something that he doesn't behave this way with other people, which I don't think he does. So probably he does that with his sisters, and maybe that's it. So I think that makes it, you just get that sense of familiarity with them together.
It's a playful.
And a little bit playful, yeah.
That's and like you said, I still tend to fall back on my earlier perception of him as being kind of cold and unfeeling, and the shift in personality, I don't know, maybe it seems a little bit duplicitous.
Oh,
but
okay.
at the same time, maybe it is a little funny and charming if you see someone who's very upright, stiff upper lip kind of a thing, who's all of a sudden just feels like joking.
Well, wait. So you say duplicitous as in he has an end that he's trying to get to?
Well, like I said, or he's there. He's got something's going on in his mind. He's putting a plan together.
Well, we know he is since we've read this book, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. But I don't know. I wonder. That's a good It's another thing to think about of how much is St. John kind of playing Jane, or maybe if with this discovery, he feels like it'll help whatever his plans are or something. So he's even more excited about it.
Finally, she left to be a governess, as you did, to undertake the education of the ward of a certain Mr. Rochester.
Mr. Rivers, I do not wish to hear more.
I must insist. Of Mr. Rochester's character, I know nothing but the fact that he proposed honourable marriage to this young girl, and at the very altar she discovered he had a wife yet alive, though a lunatic. What his subsequent conduct and proposals were, I do not know, but the governess fled, and every research after her has so far been in vain. Yet that she should be found has become a matter of urgency.
Why? Do you have news of Mr. Rochester? How is he? Where is he? What's he doing? Is he well?
You should rather ask the name of the governess and the nature of the event which requires her appearance.
You know nothing of Mr. Rochester?
No more than I have imparted.
Oh.
And that I learned from the letter of a solicitor, a Mr. Briggs. His informant was a lady, Alice Fairfax. Briggs wrote to me of a Jane Eyre. I knew a Jane Elliot.
So now that St. John knows Jane's story, I find it fun that Jane's first concern is what has happened to Rochester. And that shows that, she has a lot of anxiety about what he will do with his life with her gone. And
he's brought up in the previous chapters. It seems like she's enjoying her life at the Rivers, but then she's like, oh, I thought about him at this moment, or I had a nightmare, supposedly, some vivid dreams about him, but yeah.
Yeah, those mentions, they feel more like she's just missing him, and she doesn't really show that she's concerned as much about what he's doing. Whereas this one it's clear that she has anxiety, is probably underpinning a lot of her emotions, throughout these few chapters. But I also feel like Rochester doesn't have the same strength that Jane does. So he is going to fall back on those temptations and the vices that he had before he met Jane.
See, now that's what I was going to ask you. I thought that was just when Jane's talking about, he's probably just running off with somebody, and I'm like, that's just her guessing, though, right? Nothing. There's no confirmation of this.
Sure.
And so it's like, from what I see, is maybe he's a changed man now that she's come into his life.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I feel like that's kind of, I don't know, it's a little cynical. I think, if you ask me, a little cynical view from Jane.
I don't know. I don't know if you mean like he's a changed man, like he can move on with his life.
No, he just won't go back to gallivanting around.
Oh, right.
Because he's totally different. When a woman like Jane comes into your life, he's, for all we know, he's still pining for her the way that she's pining for him.
Yeah.
But is it just because sometimes Jane is just so self-deprecating that she can't believe that he's feeling that way, and she just automatically assumes, oh yeah, he's clearly trying to find somebody else to replace me or to get the memory of me out of his head?
I feel that, this idea of him kind of running around in like Europe or something is just a way for him to kind of avoid his emotions. Whereas, in Jane's mind, probably the best thing that he could do is to find another woman that he could love and get married and settle down. But she feels like he's not going to do that. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, and like I said, if the correspondence, all we found out is that he just wasn't there, right? Mr. Briggs went to the house and Fairfax was there. He just wasn't there.
Yes.
Did they say where he was?
No, nobody knows.
Yeah, maybe he was in that what's that town? The town where they first met, which Jane was coming back from the town.
Millcote.
Millcote.
Yeah.
So maybe he was in Millcote, getting milk in Millcote. I don't know. It could, sorry, not home. Fairfax is answering the door.
Sure.
No, who knows?
No, I mean, I would think it's more like if Briggs is communicating to someone at Thornfield asking where Jane is, Mr. Rochester, maybe Jane is thinking Mr. Rochester's going to be like, where's Jane? What do you know? And that somehow he'll be still looking for her, Otherwise, since he's not, and he hasn't showed up at her door yet, he must be away.
Yeah, he must be trying to erase the memory.
Right.
From his head. But it is kind of cute that the way that when St. John says he must have been a bad man, and then
Jane is right on him.
Exactly, right to his defense, right? That was nice.
Oh yeah, I love that moment, especially since what she says to St. John is, "You don't know him. Don't pronounce an opinion upon him." And that's something I'd like to say to people who denigrate Mr. Rochester sometimes.
Oh yeah, do people say that Do you say that to people when they denigrate meat?
Of course.
Yes.
But then that never happens, so.
Oh, okay. Do not pronounce an opinion upon him.
Now we come to the big coincidence of the book.
Dun, dun, dun.
As it turns out, Jane and the Rivers are cousins.
What?
Right?
Get out.
What are the odds?
I don't know.
For such a well-constructed book, it is jarring to have a pretty outrageous coincidence, but hey, it could happen.
See, but like at this point, how big is England? Right? Like, I know there's not a lot of people who lived there back then, but that seems a little crazy.
I mean, someone can win the lottery, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess maybe the idea being that there's only so far you could travel on foot, and then the families are probably all kind of close by unless you take a carriage to such and such place. But it just, I don't know. There's too many. I mean, we've read about this book. We both love it.
Yes.
But there are some moments where Charlotte's just like, okay, I want to have the whole thing with John Eyre and Mrs. Reed, and then we're going to have John Eyre also be related to St. John, and I don't know. And I was going to ask you, like, do you think it's a bit much to have both of these reveals happen in the same chapter? She's rich and she has family. Like,
they on top of each other.
Yeah, they didn't give a chance for the rich storyline to breathe a little bit.
I suppose, but I mean, they work really well together.
True.
They are, connected. So obviously that makes sense to me.
Yeah. But it definitely feels like it's just two halves of the same chapter. It's not a very long chapter. But then I'm wondering, like, the thought I had maybe was that, Charlotte didn't want to have Jane dwell on the notion of having no one to share the money with. Right. Because it's like, oh, I got all this money. Now what? And then at the end of the chapter, and then the next chapter, they say, hey, we're family. What? Oh, okay, now I can share the money with you. Like, she seems like she wants to act on that money that much faster, And it seems like maybe Charlotte had so many connections that she wanted to make with this book, and then she kind of dropped it in just to kind of maybe bring about a sense of joy, because Jane's existence is very gloomy sometimes, and so it's like,
that's very
why
true.
have her? Because we saw what happens. She finds out she's rich, and then she just can't really seem to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, wait a minute. You got family now.
Which is what she really wants.
Yeah, for sure.
It is a really great indication of her character and her priorities, because it drives home how she feels without family she can count on. Mm-hmm. That we've kind of grown with her from the first chapters of her as a childhood, and how bad we feel for her since the Reeds treat her so badly, they don't like her, and everything that she has gone through. That she's found romantic love, which is great. But the one thing that she's been missing is family. And now she has that too. Also money. So it's really a great arc for her. Yeah.
Money can't buy happiness, but it can. It can sometimes. And I feel like in a way, that's also like a great message to the readers too. If you're reading it, then maybe family is more important than money. Maybe this could be yet another reason that this book has stood the test of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially since I also feel like Charlotte probably really felt that. The importance of family, because she was so close with her sisters and her brother, and it was something that she probably wanted to write in for Jane, so that she can give that to her.
Sure, we've been to their house.
Yes,
we know how the property is really all packed.
Oh right, yeah, they were very very small rooms, and they were together all the time.
For sure. And then on the notion of the romantic love, I was going to ask you. I find it odd that Jane goes from being concerned about Rochester's whereabouts to saying, no one will take me for love. And I was thinking, like, maybe she's being overly dramatic, or is she just a prisoner of the moment? But then I'm thinking maybe we take it for granted because we have family and she doesn't. Right?
I was thinking how it's hard for me to kind of put myself in her shoes in that situation, because I do have a great family and we do have a great relationship. And she's, I can understand why that would be very, very important to her.
Mm-hmm. But then now that she has money, I guess, and family, does she keep her job?
Apparently not.
No? Yeah, I mean...
No, it seems like St. John doesn't even expect her. He's like, oh, I expect you're going to leave soon, right?
Well, he was expecting her to leave before she even had money.
Yeah, and then this time Jane's like, yeah, I'll wait for a replacement, but I'm out of here.
Yeah, I mean, is that a lot of money, though?
That's what I was thinking. It doesn't seem like that much. Obviously, it's not enough for us to live on if we had £5,000 in this time. But I guess thinking back, Lowood she had 15 pounds a year plus room and board. So divide that up over the course of a year. Yeah, I think that would be enough.
Should last a couple hundred years.
Yeah.
I mean, 5,000 probably seems like a lot in Victorian times. And not to mention, the life expectancy is probably a little bit shorter, no?
That's true. Right. And I'm sure Jane would live pretty modestly. So
Yeah.
if she could make it last.
If you say 5,000 pounds is going to last me for the rest of my life, and you're like, I'm going to die at 50, it definitely will last. But, but I will say, she does strike me as the type that might continue working.
Yeah,
Because
I
feel
do wonder what would she do
if
she's not married.
Well, I can't see her being like a governess on somebody
for
else's.
fun?
Yeah,
No.
But I could see the idea because she's now finding this job very fulfilling, right? Like at first she didn't care about the social standing, but then now it's like, well, she has the money, so she'd have some sort of social standing, and she'd get the respect that not a lot of rich people have, because she'd still be helping these children, guide them in their lives.
True. Yeah. No, she can be the benefactress.
Yeah.
And if I were Jane, I'd feel so much better now that the Rivers know her story. She can even share some of her pain with Diana and Mary, because I'm sure they would be sympathetic.
Oh, yeah. And now she can tell them all about that dreamy man she was supposed to marry, right? She's got some besties.
Yeah, I wonder what Diana and Mary would say about Mr. Rochester's secret. Be like, oh, girl, you got out of that. That's great.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's, like you said, we talked about it before. When should she tell them? And she didn't have to.
No,
right?
no.
The decision was kicking out of her hands. So that's
But then I also feel like, by this time, the way that she's been, as close as she's been with them, she should have told them, no? Never? She would never tell them?
I wonder, yeah. Maybe make it so that St. John doesn't have to come to her house in a blinding snowstorm. But if they come back, because they're governesses at this point, right? And so maybe when they come back, I assume they're going to come back at some point.
Christmas or something.
Yeah. Oh, blinding snowstorms.
And then she'd be like, Merry Christmas, and guess what, guys? It's time. I'll tell you.
I was going to marry a guy who had his wife in the attic. So, but yeah, maybe that's what it is. You're right. Maybe it would be a good point. But yeah, that's true. I guess it's almost a cop out in a way that she didn't have to make that difficult moment to decide or to when she's going to tell them. Yeah. So what do we have for interesting context in this chapter?
I am focusing on a quote that St. John says. He says, "You are not perhaps aware that I am your namesake, that I was christened Jane Eyre Rivers."
What is christening?
Are you very familiar with christening?
I mean, I know that they do it in the church.
Yeah, okay.
That's about all I know.
Okay, so christening is when a priest baptizes an infant and they are given their full Christian name. So St. John was given his mother's maiden name as his middle name, which is similar to Charlotte's brother Branwell, whose full name is Patrick Branwell Bronte. Branwell was their mother's maiden name.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, they always called him Branwell because obviously there was another Patrick, the father in the house. So.
Oh, I see. And that was common back then, probably, with that naming convention like that.
I don't know.
Yeah, because I would think about, like, you and I have a friend who's Russian, and I know that in Russia they have that thing where it's like, oh, the middle name is the father's name plus they add like the Ova or the Ovich.
Is that the middle name or the last name?
No, I looked it up. It's the middle name.
Oh, I see.
So that it's like son of Ivan, and so you're like, the son's middle name would be Ivanovich.
Right.
And then the last name, they have the last name as the dad, and if it's a woman, then the last name has the A added onto it.
I see.
But yeah, so it's always like the father's name is the middle name of the child.
Yeah.
Mother's maiden name.
There's a way of branding, I guess. Parents branding their children.
Yeah, but then did Charlotte and her sisters have any interesting middle names, or did they,
that's the funny thing is that only Emily had a middle name. Not sure why,
okay.
But Emily's middle name is Jane.
Jane, no way.
Yes. So yeah, that name came from, or at least probably came from her godparents, who were related to her mother. Mm-hmm. And then Emily's middle name may also have inspired Charlotte to give her character the name Jane.
Yeah, we've talked about like where the Eyre came from.
Yes.
But then where did the Jane came from? Oh, her sister's middle name.
Yeah. We're all making assumptions. We don't really know exactly why Charlotte picked the name Jane Eyre.
Yeah. It's a fun mystery to unravel over 175 years.
And the fact that there are many potential sources for the name.
That's true. Good point. All right, well, let's wrap up and just do like we always do at the end of each episode with a meaningful passage or quote. Charlene, it's your turn to go first. What is your most meaningful passage from chapter 33?
Okay, so my quote is something that encapsulates, again, the major issue of the novel. Jane actually says this. She says, "With me," said I, "it is fully as much a matter of feeling as of conscience. I must indulge my feelings. I so seldom have had an opportunity of doing so. Were you to argue, object, and annoy me for a year, I could not forego the delicious pleasure of which I have caught a glimpse, that of repaying in part a mighty obligation and winning to myself lifelong friends." So the way that Jane phrases it is conscience versus feelings, and it also kind of counters St. John's inability to understand why Jane would would divide her inheritance amongst the cousins, because that's not rational to him. But yeah. I just find that a great, like when I saw that quote, I was just like, oh yeah, that's exactly, again, what we keep coming to when we read this book of like what Jane goes through.
Sure, yeah. Like I said, she's going to put others before herself.
Yes, and the fact that she also says, I must indulge my feelings, something that St. John just doesn't do.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. She's supposed to help him with that, I thought.
Well, we'll see how much she can.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's your quote, Mike?
My quote comes from Jane as well. Well, at least it's an internal quote. And it's after she comes into money. And it's kind of like one of the main tenets of this entire chapter. She says, quote, "One does not jump and spring and shout hurrah at hearing one has got a fortune. One begins to consider responsibilities and to ponder business. On a base of steady satisfaction rise certain grave cares, and we contain ourselves and brood over our bliss with a solemn brow." I like that, it's a very profound way to look at coming into money, something you don't really think about that.
Or also something that you feel like you would be so happy.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's like, as we record this, there is a big lottery drawing going on in this country. And so you often think about like, oh, what would I do if I won? Or, do you take the lump sum? Do you get it over all these years? And, and it's interesting to think that a Victorian era heroine who has been put down upon for her entire life and she came from nothing. Yeah. And now she's trying to just downplay this good fortune. I'm wondering if that was common back then, where people didn't, especially if you came from that upbringing.
That's got to be a unique feature. Like people reading this would be like, oh my goodness, I would love it. Yeah,
but like, I think we've, you mentioned in I don't know if this is some of the Jane Austen books, but then the idea of new money versus old money. And so people get treated a little differently when they're new money.
Oh,
and
well,
so are there poor people back in the day or people who live modestly who come into money and then immediately like, great, I want to be a rich aristocrat? Or are they going to be like, no, I'm always going to be that same person that I am? And so, I don't know. I just thought it was kind of cool that she's basically saying, and it's, again, something maybe you think about if you won the lottery, is your first thought is, okay, who can I pay off my student loan? Can I
a lot of responsibility
set up an LLC? So, who can I help out within my family?
Right.
Or is it just, no, I'm buying a gold sailboat or something,
Right.
But I like that. Where she says, like, I got to consider business responsibilities. It's like the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, Jane, very practical.
Yeah, but
that's a great quote. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review on your preferred podcast platform. This really helps us grow and reach new listeners. If you want to talk Jane Eyre with me online, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at AirGuide. That's EYRE.
And if you want to hear more from me, I host my own podcast called Out of Touchstone, where my good friend Chad and I discuss all the films that Disney produced for their Touchstone Pictures label. You can also find me on Twitter at Mike DeKalb.
Thank you, and farewell for the present.